Not as optimistic about Remdesivir as some others are today?
I think that we are seeing a slight glimmer of hope here, but I worry that the exuberance is related to an old saying that there's no sauce better than hunger. And we want something so bad that even something that looks a little bit promising is getting blown out of proportion in terms of what it means for the number of lives that we're going to save here.
Why so?
Well, in particular, the studies that are going around the internet today, that we actually haven't even seen the studies, they actually change up what they were looking at. So initially, the company was trying to detect if this medication would save lives, bring people off of ventilators, but instead, actually, at the last minute, they changed their mind and said, well, we can't look at that. We're just going to look at, of the patients who went home, how quickly did they go home? And I think that's actually an important thing that they found, it looks like that it's going in that direction, and we can talk about why, but it's not the game changer.
You don't believe what Dr. Fauci had to say today in the Oval Office? You just said things that are going around the internet. This came from Dr. Fauci directly today.
Right. I shouldn't say that. Dr. Fauci is saying that he's seen results, and so it's not; those aren't rumors. That's correct. But what I mean is the interpretation of them as being a little bit more substantial in terms of that's what's going around and stock prices going up and that sort of thing. I think that Dr. Fauci has been through this before with HIV, and he sees that when a drug shows any glimmer of hope, that's a great sign because it means that we're at the beginning of a story, but not at the end of a story. So I understand where he's coming from with his optimism, but I'm measured because what we found so far is just a little piece of the puzzle.
Understood. No one's suggesting it's a panacea, but you would submit that it is a step in the right direction for a therapeutic.
It appears to be. We have to see that study. But at the same time, we got data today from The Lancet, which is one of the most prestigious journals in the world. And they did another trial, which was also, both of these studies looked to be very well designed. And that study shows absolutely no clinical improvement. And again, that's a big disappointment because we want to see something that saves lives. Now, getting people home sooner, actually, it does have a benefit. It's not just a number. It means that patients, of course, want to go home sooner. It means that we can have less PPE at the hospital burned through, and it's less expensive possibly. There's a lot of good things about it in terms of capacity. But again, I was rooting for some kind of mortality benefit.
Well, the mortality rate was lower in those that were given Remdesivir versus placebo.
It looks like there is there's not a statistically significant effect in that direction. So again, and if there is, by the way, it looks like it might be close. So I'm not going to say that there wasn't one. But what I will say is it was a pretty small benefit, it looks like. And so you would have to treat 20 or 30 patients to save one life. Again, that's a big deal, especially if you're that one life. And I think that this is the beginning of, does a medication like this in collaboration with another medication work? This is the beginning of trying to find something that will have that robust, large mortality benefit that we are all after.
To be clear, would you prescribe it?
That's a very interesting question. I think that it would depend on the situation. I think that we absolutely have to look very carefully at which patients received this drug and which patients did not. So when the trial is actually published in terms of a journal, we get to look very closely at what the demographics, the ages, how sick they were and how sick they weren't. And if all that it shows is that it was safe and that people went home sooner, then yes, I would certainly give it to some patients.
But you're not sitting here this evening saying that steadfastly you would give this medication to a COVID patient who was in your hospital who was terribly ill?
It's really hard without seeing the data. Yeah, what Dr. Fauci said would lead me to believe that I would, but again, we have to see these data and see what they mean and to know which patients it applies to because we're going to have a supply issue as well. So we want to make sure that I would definitely give it to the patients who benefited from it in this trial, and I would make sure that I didn't give it to anyone who it might have not helped or it might have hurt. And so that's what being in the clinic on the front line like I have to do. I have to say what works and for whom and when, and it's very complicated. So if what we're hearing is true, and I think it is, I would say yes, there are going to be some patients who should receive this medication because it'll get them home sooner. Yes, I would go with that.
Dr. Faust, good to have you as always. We'll talk to you again soon.